So this title, Overlooked Half of Forested Buffers. Um, I've been giving this talk for 25 years. It's remarkable to me that we put a man on the moon when I was 8 years old, and the reality is most of our society doesn't really understand, including the conservation professionals, exactly all the dimensions of how forested buffers work. We have been very articulate and very thorough in our understanding of forested buffers as filters and barriers. And what the other overlooked half is, spoiler alert, I'm going to tell you why the title. The other half of what forested buffers do for our society is not as a filter or a barrier. It is as a transformer of the stream ecosystem itself, so that the stream ecosystem itself is as functional and important for water quality gains as the filter barrier function. And that insight came out of research that was published in peer-reviewed literature, the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences in 2004. And we we are still astounded at its slow uptake. So here I am. Thank you for being in attendance, and hopefully you'll go home with a little broader sense of why streams are doing good things for us as we go along here. So the other title that I've given this talk has been Managing Microbes for Water Quality, and I will tell you, it struck me like a brick. I was at a presentation to about 40 Amish farmers in Lancaster County. There was Bob Bunsen from Penn State talking about dairy herd nutrition, and Steve Groff, internationally recognized soil health guy, talking about soil health. And what both of them were very articulate about this. They said, actually, we think you think of yourselves as managers of dairy animals, Bob said. And he said, really, what you're doing is you're managing the microbes in the rumen of the dairy animal, and it's the microbes who are doing the magic. And you're actually managing microbes more importantly than you're managing cows. Groff stood up and he said, that's really fascinating. He said, I'm here to talk about managing microbes in the soil because that's at the core of where soil health comes from. And you can put stuff on your soils to do things, but it's actually the microbes that are doing the lift. And I stood up and I said, okay, I'm here to talk to you about managing microbes in your stream system. And that was a light bulb moment for me. So that is some context for you to put things in perspective. So Stroud Water Research Center, where I work, is a group of about 50 people, maybe a dozen principal investigators, PhDs, and then support technicians and staff. We've got about a dozen educators, and we now have a staff of 9 watershed restoration program people who are conservation professionals working. I think 6.5 of the full-time equivalents out of that 9 are wholesale working on forested buffers. In 1995, Bern Sweeney, our former director, who was an aquatic entomologist and aquatic ecologist, came to understand the importance of the near stream forests to the health of the stream and the ecology of the bugs. And he became a fierce proponent for forested buffers because of what he understood about their importance to the bugs in the stream and stream health overall. So that's how we got here. I feel very privileged to be part of a shop like this group of people. So our mission is first and foremost research. We do education, and we do full-on watershed restoration as well. So here's a quick outline of where we're going. The first section, background information, is sort of a hodgepodge. Don't look for any connective organizing theme running through it. It's just stuff that I think matters and is sort of stage setting, just helping us all realize some things that may or may not be obvious. The second one, the second one, I hope there's an appearance of something, a large energizing and organizing principle through that, and that is energy. That's supposed to happen. And then the third one looks at some research on the difference that forests make. And then the fourth one is sort of a hodgepodge again of some fascinating tidbits that I've picked up from Bern Sweeney and others over the years about just to give us some humility about what we know, what we can know, what are the limits of human knowledge. These systems we're working on, the old comment of this isn't rocket science. No, this isn't rocket science. This is way more complicated than rocket science. Rocket science has a handful of variables and you got to get them right, but projectile motion through a vacuum just doesn't have the number of variables that working on streams with all the biota, all of the changing climate, all of the uh, temporal stuff of seasonality. It's just you never go in the same stream twice. The old metaphor is very, very true. So the background stuff. Um, this one is important. The small streams matter. With apologies to Texas and everybody with large, large ambitions, the capillaries of the watershed, these small streams that we can step across or step on a rock and get across, these are the heart and soul of where things good or things bad happen to our waterways in Pennsylvania. You tally up these small streams that you can step across or jump with the help of a midstream rock. That's 80% of our stream miles in Pennsylvania. We tend to think that these maybe don't merit the kind of attention and energy that larger streams do. But the stark reality is by the time a couple of first order streams get together and form a second order stream, and a couple of second order streams get together and form a third order stream, everything from third order on down, it is really hard to change the trajectory of where that stream is headed in terms of water quality, stream health, and related characteristics of, whether it's cold water fishery or whatever else. The real place to affect water quality is at the interface of the watershed with the stream, and 80% of that is really small stuff. So stream organisms are highly specialized, and they have been historically since the last glaciation 10,000 years ago, they have been highly adapted to forested conditions. And I'm talking now in the eastern United States. There's been discussions about even in the prairie Midwest that many of the streams had fringing cottonwood forests and cottonwood whatever you call them, fringing forests, fringing woodlands, that the streams were still adapted to forested conditions even there. But let's just leave it at the East Coast, Eastern US at this point for our discussion. So here's a very simplified food web diagram of a stream, and I'll just point out a couple of things on here. These bugs are highly specialized. So take a look at the 3 o'clock position on this, if this is a clock. There's an invertebrate scraper. An invertebrate scraper, a scud, that happens to eat epilithic algae, which is fancy name for algae that grows on rocks. So they are specialized. They have mouth parts that they feed on by scraping algae off the rocks. There's a bunch of mayflies that do that same thing, highly specialized. That algae, these diatoms that I will talk about in a little bit, they are like the olive oil of the stream. High nutrition, really high calorie content. These are really valuable food sources. But if the stream is not shaded by trees, those epilithic algae burn out and they go away, and invertebrate scrapers have lost their main food source that they are specialists on. At the 9 o'clock position on this diagram is an invertebrate shredder. That happens to look like a stonefly, stylized stonefly nymph. They have shredding mouth parts, and they eat and shred coarse particulate organic matter, in other words, leaves that fall in the stream. And not only are there leaves falling in the stream, but those leaves get covered with fungi and bacteria, and they form a biofilm that has more nutrition than, frankly, the leaf itself in many cases. But these invertebrate shredders are getting they're getting the yogurt along with the waffle. It's like a waffle smeared with yogurt. So they're getting their goodies that way. Then in the 6 o'clock position, you see something called an invertebrate collector. Don't we all love black flies? That's a black fly larva. And they've got those little nets out collecting fine particulate organic matter, little bits of frass and leaf pieces and feces from other species, little pieces of organic matter all coming down the pipe. So they're specialists on that sort of floating particulate organic matter. If the leaves go away, the invertebrate shredders don't have their food. So these things, are specialized in how they function. And I will say, whoever did the diagram, and I don't think it was Stroud, I borrowed this from somewhere, right at the very center of things, you see the simple words, dissolved organic matter. You will see as we move into the second part of this talk, whoever did this, whether it was symbolic or brilliance or whatever else, dissolved organic matter ought to be right at the center of things. And in this diagram, they've got it right at the very center of things. But the wider point here is these organisms are highly specialized. And when you are a specialist and things change, that can be a problem. So if the leaves go away, the shredders are out of luck. If the epilithic algae go away, the diatoms, the scrapers are out of luck. This isn't a eulogy for bugs. It is simply pointing out the complexity and interconnections of things. So here's an example. This is the kind of nerdy science that Stroudwater Research Center does. Feeding preferences of bugs. So this is a crane fly. Pleased to meet you. Face only a mother could love. That is the larvae, aka maggot, on the left, and on the right, it looks like this, jumbo jet-sized mosquito. They are non-biting flies, but they are quite large. So sciencey sorts of experiments, things going on here. If you take crane fly larvae and you put them in a tray and raise them with a whole bunch of different leaf types in those trays, and you check them every few hours and check which leaf type they are feeding on, you will find out that it's not random. You will find out that there is a very distinct feeding preference for crane fly larvae, and they will eat all of the sugar maples until they are completely gone. Then they will switch over to red maples. Then they will switch to river birch, and the last things they will eat are the the oaks with all the tannins and more refractory compounds in them. That's the last stuff they will eat. So these bugs they know what they're eating. They are preferring some things over another. Now, if you redid the experiment, and in the trays, you now put, say in that first tray, maybe that tray is nothing but sugar maple leaves. And in the second tray is nothing but white oak leaves. And the third tray is nothing but river birch leaves. And now the science part of this is not looking at what they're preferring to eat, but how much weight are they gaining when they eat that particular type of plant of source material, of food. And lo and behold, and this is why it's so wonderful to have graduate students, because this is excruciating types of data collection. I'm not cut out for that kind of science, but God bless them that they are. Many of the folks at the lab are just down in the details. You will find there are differences that cranefly larvae, which feed on sugar maples, grow faster on those leaves than any other leaf in the mix. Remember, this tray, all they had was sugar maple to eat. So you can monitor their growth rate, figure out what their growth rate is, and lo and behold, they grow fastest on sugar maples and they grow slowest on the oaks. And that sort of sounds familiar. So what you're seeing is these bugs know what they're eating, they have preferences, and they will optimize their growth by eating what they grow fastest on. This is complicated stuff that's, going on under our noses all the time, but who pays enough attention to know this sort of stuff? I will say, because we had this question, people were saying, well, shouldn't we be planting lots of sugar maples along our streams then? Well, sugar maples don't really love the near stream soggy soil context. I'm not sure why Stroud put sugar maple in the study. It's not a common riparian species, but it was in the study, so here it is. Point being, for cranefly larvae, they grew best on sugar maple. It may be entirely possible that for a certain species of caddisfly, they do best eating sycamore, or they do best eating river birch, or they may even do best eating oaks. There are specialists on hemlock needles up in the parts of the state where the hemlocks are robust and near stream dominators. So point being specialization, point not being let's plant a lot of sugar maples along our waterways. So, and then the last point, this doesn't really have a lot of backup to it, but I refer to the invisible herd as really being critical in this sort of potpourri of factoids that I'm throwing at you. Talk about the invisible herd purifying our drinking water. The invisible herd being diatoms, fungi, the microbiota, the bacteria in particular, but diatoms, fungi, the small stuff, the bacteria. These organisms are really who is doing the work of water quality purification in our state. We have sewage treatment plants. They get things to a place where it's not dangerous to release them. That doesn't mean you want to drink the water that's not dangerous immediately below a sewage treatment plant. The answer is in the miles that water is in contact with the biota, the living stuff in the stream, the organisms in the stream will polish that water and get it back to a high level of drinking water quality that's a free benefit to our society that these organisms are doing for us. So part one summary, the small streams matter. Don't just focus on third order and bigger streams. We are far better served focusing on the small streams. And frankly, they are much easier to deal with than the large volume, larger order streams, just because of the kinds of forces that get involved. Stream organisms are highly adapted to forests. To do their best work, they need trees. And then the invisible herd. It's the bacteria, fungi, and the diatoms that really are the heavy lifters. It's like it has ever been. The small gals are doing most of the work. Part two, hidden energy of streams. Here I do hope you see a through-going organizing principle, namely energy. I love this photo, and I'm blanking on it's a reveal of what the answer is on the hidden energy of streams. So in streams, when I look in a stream, I don't see macrophytes. Most of the streams that I see, all the way back to scouting and nature merit badge and environmental science merit badge, the sun is the basis of all energy for ecosystems or the common ones, not hydro vents in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There's different ecosystems there, but the sun is the source of the energy for most of our ecosystems on the planet. When I look into a stream, I am not seeing highly visible green plants. There are streams, there's some limestone streams, Goburn, go west from here, and La Torch Spring Run, you've got all this watercress and other stuff, that are macrophytes, are visible green photosynthetic plants living in the streams. But most of our streams aren't overrun with large green plants. They do have a very healthy population of diatoms. That is the microscopic individual cell algae that are essentially the ferns of the stream. They need shady conditions to thrive. They are a phenomenal food source for scrapers like the mayfly that's pictured there. And in high light environments and high temperatures, they will burn out. They do not thrive in full sun. But they are just a limited part of the food energy in the stream. So where is the photosynthesis happening to drive a stream ecosystem? And yeah, okay. Life's complicated. The photosynthesis to drive a stream ecosystem isn't actually, most of it's not actually happening in the stream. It's happening external to the stream. Oh, so these near stream areas are part of the stream ecosystem. Absolutely. Absolutely. So leaves, twigs, pollen, solid carbon, these are very important food sources to streams. The shredders will tell you that. The collectors will tell you that. Streams are wet depressions in the landscape. The nerds at Stroud Center and the science they do says a stream will collect more than 5 times the amount of leaf litter that a forest floor will collect over a span of a year. So leaves are wet depressions. They're sticky. Winds are blowing the leaves around. They land on the stream. They get stuck. But these tree leaves and the other solid carbon, these are still only about 1/3 of a stream's energy. So where is the hidden energy of streams? What is the hidden energy source for streams? Okay. Continuing on with the solids theme. If you know what silage is partially decomposed plant parts, often corn and corn stems, both the ear and the stalk. And then the bacteria and the fungi and the microbes start to go to work on that stuff. We eat this sort of stuff. Sauerkraut is we're talking about the same sorts of processes. So here is at the core of something to take with you today. You're looking at the main source of food for streams. This happens to be from somewhere in upper Michigan, the fault line that creates Niagara Falls sort of deal. So we got a forested stream dropping over at little falls, and it's revealing something to you about what I'm telling you is the main source of food for streams. And that food source is watershed tea. That's the term that Stroud has tried to, give some lay people traction to dissolved organic carbon. It's about half of a stream's food supply is that dissolved organic carbon. We drink tea as a stimulant. It is also a food source. There are carbohydrates in there. There are proteins in there. It's a food source. And if you drink a lot of Turkey Hill iced tea, you'll find out just what a phenomenal food source it can be. So there's a reason that the color of that tea is the same as the color of that river. And that's because these tannins and other compounds are the source of those they are the color. The tea is essentially a leaf of a bush from which you leach out those same compounds that are leaching out in the forest, going into our streams and rivers. So here's what a pie chart diagram can look like. So that dissolved organic matter, that watershed tea is, every stream would vary slightly from this, but it's about half. Terrestrial detritus, that's talking about the solid carbon, and then the algae, the diatoms, the red wedge. And this is for a freestone stream, a non-limestone stream. A limestone stream this diagram could look radically different because they often have lots of macrophytes growing right in the stream channel itself. Very different stream ecosystem. So just to help, if this is hard to get your head wrapped around, trees are producing at or dissolved organic matter. They are leaching out organic matter into the shallow soil water, running down their stems. The bacteria and fungi in the biofilm use that dissolved organic matter as a food source. They are consumed as sort of a stream yogurt, as a food product by microscopic bugs. The shredders, for example, as I talked about the waffle with the yogurt on it, they're eating the leaf, but they're getting a huge dollop of whipped cream or yogurt or whatever you want to refer to the stuff as. And then those microscopic bugs get eaten by bigger bugs and they get eaten by fish. And in the reality of the complexity of our world, the carbon molecules in that beautiful brook trout, they have come from the forest that is lining this watershed. So those carbon molecules have made their way through that chain that I just showed you to turn into this wonderful trout. And I would say this watershed tea, if you pay attention to this, you can see this. After a long period of no rain, like we're behind on rain right now. After we get a good soaking rain and enough to bring the streams up a bit, you go look at streams that are in a forested condition, you will see them turn iced tea colored. There's a lot of compounds that are waiting to get flushed into the stream. They've been breaking down, the bacteria are working in the soil, and all of a sudden you get this slug of watershed tea into the system that will actually make the stream turn brown. And it's not pollution. It is the mother's milk of what makes streams work. So there's a corollary. When you know that streams derive the majority of their energy from trees, and that the dissolved portion of that is huge, how far from a stream can you plant a tree and benefit the stream? And the answer to that question is as far as water flows. Because wherever those trees are growing and producing dissolved organic compounds, water is going to carry it to a stream. And, that's why. I mean, Stroud has realized a long time ago that when the percent forest cover in a watershed dips below 70%, the chance of finding brook trout dips below 5%. You just don't generally see brook trout in streams that don't have at least 70% forest cover. So, okay, third part of the talk, what difference do forests make? So this is now when we get into some nerdy science stuff again. And this is a aerial diagram of southeastern Pennsylvania, Chester County in particular. The green would represent wood patches, woodlots, remnant forests on the landscape. The white would represent deforested areas. And in Chester County, that's oftentimes horse pasture or cropland or hayland. And Stroud recognized that this is a study waiting to be done, that you can look at what difference it makes whether there's a forest on a stream by looking at all the kinds of characteristics of the stream that we care about and looking at it out in the sun-drenched grass buffer areas, and then looking at them in the shady forested areas. And they limited their study to good grassed buffered streams and compared to areas of streams that were under forested canopy. So I grew up in Lancaster County, and the heifers denuded the near stream landscape, and we all swam in that. And it's a wonder we didn't get cryptosporidium and die as kids, but we didn't. But this, I'm not talking about the kind of beat down, cow-infested stream conditions that we've all seen too much of. I'm talking here about well-managed, farms with good grass buffers. And what difference does it make whether there's grass on the banks or trees on the banks? So, so this was published in 2004, looking at 16 streams, southeastern Pennsylvania. So this is right in our bailiwick. And what that study found, and that was an extremely expensive and exhaustive study. Ecology work is hard to do. Systems are so variable. A lot of data. So in short, what they found was forested streams tend to be wider, 1.5 to 3 times wider than the stream reaches that route in the grassed buffered areas. The velocity of the stream in the forested sections was up to 2.5 times slower. It's spending more time there. It's spread out more. It's shallower. It's wider. It's flowing more slowly. And this is huge. If you are someone who cares about stream health, up to 5 times more biological activity per unit length of stream. So there's 5 times more stuff going on life-wise in the forested sections than out in the grass sections. And then we as consumers of ecological services are interested in, okay, what does that mean for pollution reductions? Well, up to 9 times more nitrogen uptake, 4 times was typical. Up to 2 to 5 times more phosphorus uptake, although it was highly variable and hard to get a statistically significant result in that. And up to 3 times the atrazine degradation in forested areas compared to out in the grass areas. Atrazine they picked out as a representative agricultural pesticide. So that is saying that some of the common water quality insults that we throw at our streams, forested stream reaches are far better at dealing with those by multiples, by factors that you're looking at here, many times more. So why is that the case? Well, we've talked about the preferred foods. The forests are giving them their preferred foods. It's not hard to recognize that there's better habitat conditions, and the life of the stream clings to the surfaces. If you are, other than fish that can hold their place, organisms that do not cling on to surfaces very quickly wind up in estuaries and bays that are not conducive to their preferred manner of living. So things hang on. They cling to surfaces. So better habitat. And we are widely familiar with this idea that forested streams are cool, and that's important, whether it's juvenile brook trout, like you see lower left, the mayfly or the diatoms. Summer cool matters. And here's a representative set of data from Stroud's research over the years. Meadow streams tend to run warmer in the summer, and they will spike temperatures that become lethal for a lot of organisms. Things can't deal with, bathtub temperature water. Woodland streams are cooler. What was surprising to me is look at the winter temperatures. The winter temperatures, the meadows are far colder. And I have learned in my years since then that cold is a stress on stream life as well. You can kill things by chilling them below 40 degrees. Some things won't take 35. It's more than they can deal with. So that is to say, forested conditions moderate temperatures, both the, well-known summer maxima, but also the winter minima. This one, I think, is a lot less obvious to many of us, and that is streams have more habitat. And I'm doing a time check here. Yeah, I gotta get moving here. I tend to get excited and wax long-winded. So streams have more habitat. Take a look at this same piece of stream. You could jump across that. That is the same stream as this photograph, the same stream. The difference is forested canopy versus grass. The grasses encroach, they trap sediment, the stream gets narrower, and there are streams that the reed canary grass will completely bridge it, and you won't see a defined channel. So forested areas are much wider in general, and it is because of the encroaching powers of grasses. So here's a Mannheim, Pennsylvania site. We're doing a buffer project, but look how narrow the stream is. That's reed canary. It's been mowed back, so we can give the trees a fighting chance. Here's the same stream about 100 yards down. There's no other tribs coming in. This is no more water. It is the same stream. It's just, how many times wider because it's in the shade and the grasses aren't encroaching and tying things up. So what am I getting at is there's a lot more surface area, and it's not just the bottom surface area. It is all manner of surfaces. There's more of in a forested stream. Here's a graduate student project. Figure out the surface area of a tangled mass of tree roots, and what they find out is it's orders of magnitude more than the surface area of bare roots. And where does stuff live? On those surfaces. So here's going back to the other half of forested buffers. Buffers are more than filters. The blue arrows, green arrows here represent the filtering barrier benefits of forested buffers. But what I've been describing to you is all of what's going on in the channel. The yellow arrows are representing the kinds of benefits we are getting from in-stream processing that is vibrantly enhanced by inputs from forested conditions. That part of this reality we have overlooked very substantially over the years. So I'm going to skip through rather quickly on a study of width. They looked, our two best minds reviewed 238 scientific papers looking for what does width matter with these varying parameters here, like what does width matter to stopping sediment? And the short message here is wider buffers trap more, but even 100-foot forested buffers, over half of the nitrogen is getting to the stream. That is to say, we need the stream itself and the in-stream processes that I've been describing to do critical work for our society. We need more than just a filter. We need to transform the streams because stuff is still getting in. So they're more than filters. Okay, last part. So, and this is just a potpourri of stuff. That stonefly larvae, top right, phenomenal predator, fascinating insect. The females only become reproductively viable after they have fed on the pollen of certain terrestrial trees. And I don't know if it's the tulip poplar. I put the tulip poplar photo in there just because it represents terrestrial tree flowers that these things have to feed on. If that female doesn't feed on the needed species of pollen, she's not reproductively viable and reproduction doesn't happen. Who knew? The glob that you're looking at top left is a mass of caddisfly larvae. This smart mom has evolved a strategy whereby they laid their egg masses on the underside of logs above the stream, and they avoid egg predators that way. There's a whole bunch of egg predators in the stream that if they lay their eggs on the rocks, they're going to get eaten. So they lay their eggs in these snotty masses above the stream on the underside of those logs. And when the larvae have developed to a point where they are mobile and they can avoid predation better, they'll drop out of the egg mass and they'll drop into the stream and on they go. Smart. What happens if there aren't trees overhanging the stream? Well, their strategy doesn't work. Trees provide all sorts of other benefits to streams. Fish furniture, I call it, setting the furniture for the fish and all the other organisms. And in that tangle of woody debris, you'll get really variable depth and velocity conditions, and you will get things like finely graded sediments that go from, stuff the size of walnuts to stuff the size of sand. And somewhere on that continuum, brook trout are going to find the kind of gravel that they are happy to spawn in. So complicated stuff. Aldo Leopold made the comment, the first step in intelligent tinkering is to save all the pieces. Stroud, Eastern Brook Trout joint venture, they agree. And one of the critical pieces for healthy streams is forests. So don't underestimate forested buffers. Remember the in-stream part. Remember the 2 to 8 times more nitrogen removal. Keep in mind, if you've got a pollution problem in a stream, the organisms that are in the stream removing those pollutants, they don't care whether it came from a point or a non-point source. Your buffer does not have to be between the source of contamination and the stream. You can put a buffer miles down from a contamination source, and that buffer will help remediate that insult to the stream. And I will also say, we do conservation on a very broad landscape. The conservation professionals in Pennsylvania and across the U.S. Forested buffers are phenomenally important. They are not going to get the job done for us if we are not doing conservation on the other 97% of the landscape. So, I'm a real enthusiast for forested buffers, but don't get the message that this is somehow the answer. There are a lot of answers, and we need them all. So that's my contact information. If you have stuff you want to follow up with me, reach out. I spend too much time on spreadsheets, and if you ask me a question and rescue me from that horrible fate, I will appreciate that. So